realise that.
Oh, exactly. And you know what's going to happen is that even the parents who go, what? You know, a pizza voucher, and then they leave it on the kitchen counter, and then, you know, the kids come along and go, oh my gosh, look at this, a pizza voucher. And so the kids go along, they redeem the pizza voucher, and that's it. Chevron are free and clear. I mean, this, there's no other way to put it. It is disgusting. Totally predictable, and Chevron's lawyers are obviously, you know, rubbing their hands in glee, thinking that, you know, they've come up with a scheme here that's going to save them literally billions. Well, I hope that the local community, and I'm sure they are getting up to speed. They're collecting all these vouchers, and that they will take them back to Chevron and tell them to stick them where the sun don't shine. And on that note, we'll take a short break.
60% of the English countryside is under threat from fracking, a process which has transformed the landscape in many parts of the United States and Australia, and contaminated the drinking water and air with highly toxic chemicals and gases.
1 in 3 hydraulic fracturing was using a carcinogen. So it really is a chemical cocktail that goes into the earth, of which up to 40% remains there.
The grandchildren were in the bath and they started screaming, and everything that was in the water was burnt.
The MDs have been instructed not to report any negative health effects that they believe to be associated with living over a gas field.
There's nothing inherent about the shale gas process that is going to lead to problems.
Some of this material was actually taken to a large sewage treatment works, which had no capacity to handle radioactive materials of this kind.
800,000 gallons was dumped into the Manchester Ship Canal.
50 seismic events were recorded during just 6 fracking treatments.
What is the minimum depth that the fracking will fracture?
We can't tell you until we drill the exploration.
Have you no idea whatsoever? Because it doesn't look like you've done your research.
Shale gas is part of the future, and we will make it happen.
We are just numbers, and we are sat on this rich vein of gas, and they will do and say anything to get that gas out of the ground.
Did you already put it in?
And welcome back to Fracking Nightmare. This is part 2 of episode 17. Now, Bear's going to be joining us a little bit later on in the show, and as I mentioned, we're going to be looking at the current state of the British water supply and the levels of contamination and what has led to the current levels of contamination before the unconventional gas industry actually gets a foothold. But in this part of the show, I'm very pleased to welcome back my very good friend, Brian Monk from southern Queensland in Australia. So, Brian, are you there, my friend?
I am here.
Golly, man, that beard is getting longer every time I see you.
Yeah, I'm pretty proud of it now.
I've lost your sound there, but I lost you. You tugged your beard, and I lost the sound.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, it's grown. I'm becoming a bush ranger now.
Now, Brian, I know that you've had quite some experiences since you were last with us at the beginning of November. So I know that the gas industry has literally started to encroach on the borders of your property.
Absolutely. We're very lucky with large property. It's 5 houses, but they are drilling wells to our rivers at the moment. Which is a little amusing because we actually have to go to see it. But if you were on a small property, say 50 or 100 acres, they would be in our face right now.
So, how far away from the house are the rigs?
The nearest rig is that's been here is about 1.3 something like that.
You know what I mean?
Okay, Brian, the sound is actually breaking up a bit. You know what, my friend? I think we may have to suggest that we turn off the video because I think the video may be taking quite a bit of the bandwidth.
Okay, not a problem. I'll turn that off.
The speed of fucking light.
Okay, that already sounds clearer.
Okay, good.
Oh yeah, that's a lot better. So sorry, can you say again? How close is the closest rig to the house?
Probably 1.2, 1.3 kilometres, something like that, nearly a mile.
And are they drilling under your property?
No, they're not doing horizontal drilling. They're just doing vertical drilling in this area.
Okay, but it's a production well into the coal seams, yeah, or is it an exploratory well?
No, we're in a Jamet gas field from British Gas or BG Group, and no, it's a full production well. Not in production yet because the gathering lines aren't built, but they're rapidly building gathering lines now.
Okay, so the well is into the coal seams. Obviously, they're looking for what you guys call coal seam gas, what we call coal bed methane. And now they had to obviously get rid of the water in the seams because that's the process that actually enables the gas to flow. Did they actually have to frack the seams to enable the dewaterification process? I've lost you, Brian. Brian, I think I've lost the link. If I was a conspiracy theorist, my gosh. Brian? No, I think unfortunately we've lost the link with Brian. We'll try and get that back in a little later on the show. I think what we'll do is maybe we could bring Bear back in. We'll see if we can get the problem resolved in the next break. So Bear is coming back on stream in just a second. Meanwhile, while we're waiting for Bear, let's just take another look at something that occurred at Barton Moss on Friday of last week. There was a particularly aggressive police operation on Friday, and this was probably in response to the fact that Peel hadn't got their way, and so Peel's QC and Amanda Webster and everyone else that's got a finger in this disgusting pie probably had a word in the police's ear and said, okay, let's give the Barton Moss Protection Camp a really hard time. And so they forced the line down the road, and for the actually, I think this is the first time that I've seen it. There was actually a sergeant calling the shots on the line. You can see the inspector with the red lapel behind the sergeant here. But the guy who was actually calling the shots was this guy, Sergeant 6884. Of course, the standard practice now in Greater Manchester Police is to refuse to give you their name and simply give you their number. Well, Sergeant 6884 was, I regret to say, a classic example of psychological reframing, and probably topped up with steroids as well. It was very clear from his behaviour. You can see this for yourself on the video footage, on the live streams from Bambuza. This guy was in very aggressive mode. I mean, even ripping into one of his own officers for breaking the line at one point. On the right-hand side of the screen, you can see a young girl looking back there. She's 15-year-old Saffron Callahan. And Saffron was at Barton Moss as part of a school project. She was with her stepmother and her uncle, and she was in the front line. And remember, this is a peaceful protest. There has not been a single element of aggression from any one of the protection community in the entire Barton Moss campaign, as the video evidence will of course support. So any suggestion by the police that there has been anything other than peaceful protest is actually a fundamental lie, and we know they cannot produce a single piece of video footage to support such a claim. Well, young Saffron was eventually arrested for aggravated trespass. And as the video footage would show, she is doing nothing more than walking down in front of the police line. She was being brutally pushed down the lane, and the police officer behind her was effectively grinding himself into her as they were walking down the lane. Saffron was eventually arrested, and despite the fact that the police's own guidelines are that in the case of a minor being arrested, if at all possible, an adult should be able to accompany them to the police station. But Saffron, despite the fact she was with her stepmother, was not afforded that courtesy, and she was taken to Swinton police station, where she was held for some 5 hours before being released to a rapturous welcome by the protection community that had gathered outside Swinton police station. So, although of course there is a mainstream, or lamestream, as I prefer to call it, media blackout on all things Barton Moss, the alternative community will continue to put out the information, to put out the video footage, and to expose the lies and the deceit being put out by the Greater Manchester Police and all those who are part of this abomination. Well, meanwhile, Bear is back with us. Bear, are you with us?
Hi. Yeah, I'm back in.
Okay, thanks for standing in there. Well, unfortunately, we lost Brian. We'll try and get Brian back when we take a break in about 15 minutes or so. But Bear, now this week, by the way, welcome back, and you're definitely looking as though you're back on form.
Oh, I am. I'm happily recovered. It was one of the worst bouts of flu I think I've ever had.
Oh, well, keep it to yourself, my friend. That's the last thing I need.
Oh, well, don't worry.
So, Bear, now, this week you're going to talk to us about the current state of the British groundwater and the aquifer system, I believe.
Yeah, that's correct. It's sort of a precursor to me studying the known contamination, or studies that have found problems with contamination from fracking into groundwater. I thought it'd be a good idea to actually look into the information that's available about the current state of British groundwater, the aquifer systems, how much water we extract, and also which ones of these have already been compromised from our industrial activities, both presently and in the past as well. The three sources that I've used for most of my information is two reports. Now, I think these were done in 2007, but it does show the UK government's ability to write a basic technical report, because there was no dates in either of the reports that I studied.
That's convenient.
Both done by the... Yeah, well, yeah, I know. Both by the Environment Agency. The two main ones. One is Underground Under Threat, an Environment Agency report into groundwater from 2007, and directly linked to that is the Environment Agency Groundwater Protection Policy and Practice, GP3. And a third one that it's just come out last month is the Shale Gas and Water Independent Review by the Chartered Institute of Water and Environmental Management. So these are the three main documents I've taken, almost all the information I'm going to be recounting today.
Okay, now this is, of course, the current state of play as per these reports. So this is before any hydraulic fracturing actually takes place in the UK.
Yeah, that's correct. And it was actually quite disturbing to find out how much of our water is already under threat from various agricultural and industrial processes. I'll run through with some figures about how much groundwater usage we generally use today in the UK. On average, 2004 and 2005, about 150 litres of water was supplied to each person in England and Wales. So that's 150 litres per person. And that totally approximates to about 9 million cubic metres a day. That's a vast amount of water, but in general, compared to how much water we do have, it isn't actually that much. The main aquifers in England are the chalk, which most people will have heard of in the south and the east of England, sandstone in the west, and the central Midland area, limestone. But usable groundwater is predicted to lie underneath about 85% of the UK land surface. So we have a massive resource here. It is, this is one of the best things about Britain with regards to the resources that are essential to life, is that we do have a lot of free, clean drinking water available, essentially. Now, for those that don't know, groundwater forms from rainwater that falls on land, naturally migrates through the cracks and pores in the surface until it reaches an impermeable barrier, so that's a rock it can't move through, such as a highly dense shale. There's a good example. Now, groundwater can be various ages. It's not as if all the water in an aquifer comes from one point in time. Some of the water at the surface of an aquifer, well, as in the point nearest to the surface of the ground, that can be up to several months old, whereas water at the base of aquifers can be up to millions of years old. But, and this is something I'll stress, we don't know. One of the main reasons is that we just don't have the studies and surveys that have been done to understand the actual mechanisms that are at play in the deeper part of our aquifers and how that relates, because there are certain points where we do know the water can go for kilometres underground from surface aquifers. There's some sort of migration, but what it is, we can't predict. Why it's happening, we don't know, but the distance it goes down is into the area that fracking will potentially be taking place, several thousand metres down in certain points. So the repeated times they've stated that the surface aquifers are nowhere near the subsurface geology that they're going to be fracking is actually a misnomer, it's a lie, because there are points where there is intermingling of these waters, and we don't know enough about the mechanisms to be able to say what potentially could happen from that.
Well, Bear, when I spoke with a hydrologist who came to one of my Fractured Future events last year, and he was concerned because he told me that in his opinion, his academic opinion, that basically all of the aquifers beneath the UK were in some way interlinked.
It's quite possible. I mean, one thing that I found from the studies, especially from the Chart Surveyor study on shale gas and water, was that they're only now, once again, only now, our BGS and other geological agencies and obviously the industry are collaborating to create a model and a map to understand the unique hydrological features in the UK, because obviously, as mentioned before, the UK has very complicated geology which will obviously directly affect how fracking will take place in this country, and also the water systems that are intermingled in these geological the way to describe, a lot of people think of water running through caves and through almost like fairy tale grottos underground. Most of the time it's moving through tiny pore spaces in what would appear to us as solid rock. So there's no way to actually be able to tell, without knowing how every rock behaves over the entirety of the UK, how this water intermingles and where this water actually can move to. And as I say, in some cases it's millions of years. Just as an example, I found here, is that the aquifers in the southeast of England, the water that's extracted periodically from the lower parts of that last fell on the surface of the earth as rain 20,000 years ago in the last ice age. So that can give you an idea that there's water moving around that hasn't seen the light of day for thousands, tens of thousands, millions of years in certain cases. So it's quite possible that aquifer systems are